Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and this is part of my Garibay RPG series, specifically the D&D Next content. So today I'm going to be talking about the D&D Next Player's Handbook, most important book that's being published today, worked on by any team. And essentially what I want to talk about is essentially just one of the issues that the D&D Next team faces, and that is, to me, a really key issue for any major project, which is determining the heart of your project. What is the most central point that you need to be working on right now? And to me, the D&D Next projects, the heart of that project is the player's handbook. And so I keep talking about the player's handbook, even though they're really working on the entire game. But to me, the thing that the team really needs to figure out is that the PHB is the game. So the reason why I'm saying this is the D&D Next, Dungeons and Dragons Next Player's Handbook is the core of the entire game. So any tabletop role-playing game right now, the way it's structured, you have one dungeon master and you have 4 to 6 players. And so the Player's Handbook is going to be purchased by every single DM before it's really purchased by almost any players. That's generally the way tabletop role-playing game goes. And then it's going to be purchased by as many players as possible if the DMs like it and carry it essentially to their players. Dungeon Masters, in my opinion, they form they form essentially player groups. Just the way a party leader would form a party. The way, you'd have a paladin gather up their thief and their rogue, the fighter, all clerics, all those different groups from the tavern. DMs are generally the ones who read deepest into the book, get the most excited, and generally pull things together. So the player's handbook is for the DM first, and then for the players first. It's written specifically for the players. It's supposed to be most useful to the players, but the Dungeon Master reads everything, essentially, usually. And so that's why this book is so key. It's for everybody involved in the game, and it's written centrally for the players, which are going to outnumber the DM by 4 to 1. So the other issue is if you get the Dungeon Master Guide and the Monster Manual, the other 2 components of the if you have the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual Guide, the Dungeon Master Guide, if you have those 3 elements, you can play virtually any tabletop fantasy role-playing game, and generally, so those are the core components of the game. But that player handbook, if you get the Dungeon Master Guide perfect, and you get the Monster Manual perfect, and you do not execute well on the Player's Handbook, those other books are for naught. It doesn't mean anything. Whereas if you get the Player's Handbook perfect, the Dungeon Master Guide is really highly unnecessary in that, again, Dungeon Masters, they're a strange creature. They're self-motivated. They're going to be able to figure out how to play a game with just a Player's Handbook. And even without a monster manual, really all most DMs are going to need is they're going to need to know how to create an undead. They're going to need to know how to create a goblin, essentially, and then some other type of special monster, like maybe an ooze. But, they're going to be able to build up the few monsters they need for their campaign right away by themselves. They'll be able to mock that up. But the Player's Handbook just has too much for them to mock up. It has so much in it. It has the races, the classes. It has a good bit of, you can see by the powers of the classes and the races how combat is going to work. Almost every component, every moving part of a tabletop role-playing game goes through the Player's Handbook. So the Player's Handbook is really the heart of this project. So they must execute on that well, even to the point of pouring all their heart and soul into the Player's Handbook and kind of putting the DMG and the Monster Manual on the back burner. You could deliver that first part, and I think the community will actually wait for the rest. And you could even get a second chance on the DMG or the Monster Manual. It's not that critical because your Dungeon Masters are going to be able to run without it. And but the Player's Handbook, if that doesn't go right, you're done, right? And so I think a lesson that non-D&D players can learn from D&D Next, and this is something I'm really intrigued by. I believe that the D&D Next is it's like the Manhattan Project or something. It's just so important and so special for what is being done that it has lessons for everyone. D&D players, D&D Dungeon Masters, and people who have never played D&D and really don't care about D&D really should be watching the D&D Next creation of the Player's Handbook, because they have so many obstacles to succeeding at this task that, and I think they're going to make it, that there's going to be stories just in the creation of this book. There already are. The exodus of Monty Cook to Numenera, this massive players, pulling in all the players for this play test, the way they're dealing with how do you run a tabletop role-playing game company when you can't sell a product, right? And Hasbro's breathing down your neck to say, you guys need to generate money, and they're doing that. They're actually thinking of innovative ways to make money while they can't sell their current version. So these guys, they're just slaying monsters left and right. They're in the middle of the dungeon themselves, just hacking away at all these crazy problems that are in front of the Player's Handbook, right? So I did want to talk about the Player's Handbook, the different versions, specifically 4th edition. So 4th edition, I think there were some really neat things that they need to pull forward. And actually, you know what? I think I'm going to break that into a separate video. I'll go into each of the different versions as well. But the Player's Handbook is really key, and I think they need to pull this forward. So I think the big lesson here is know the heart of your project. Pour your heart and mind and soul into your heart of your project first. First things first. Primary is primary. And thank you very much. Take care.